McKenna. That should be an interesting adventure unto itself. But I want to ask you, Terence, about a little bit about souls. You mentioned souls, and so I have two questions. One is, there was a very old medical study in which a medical doctor actually endeavored to set out and prove, in days when it was politically okay to do this kind of thing, that the soul could actually be measured, that at the very instant of human death, and he went through a whole big trip. I put the medical report up on my website. The human body loses about 3/4 of an ounce, and not due to gases or anything else you might imagine in your mind, no physical cause, all of that accounted for. And he printed and published this medical study suggesting the human body actually instantly, at the instant of death, loses 3/4 of an ounce of weight. Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, looking at it through the eyes of novelty theory, I think nature is very reluctant to give up a complex, ordered form once it's been achieved. I've noticed that the difference between living organisms and things like chairs and tables, the chairs and tables don't metabolize. In a sense, the soul is something which is manifest in time. It's almost as though organisms have a hyperdimension. They're objects with time folded inside of them.
Yes.
And at death, what seems to happen is this complex morphogenetic field, if you will, simply withdraws back into whatever higher dimension it came from in the first place. It's not that it falls apart or dissolves, it's that it retracts from matter. It clothed itself with matter for some decades, and now it's simply releasing its organizational power over matter, but it isn't being destroyed. I mean, that's my personal take.
I absolutely agree with you, but by your description, it would suggest there could not be physical weight to it, or could there be?
No, I think there could be. I think we don't know what it is or of what it consists. This is all, as you pointed out, because of social attitudes and different ideas of medical ethics. These areas are very, very difficult to get data on.
All right. Next data point. I don't know up there on the mountain whether you've got television. Do you have television up there?
Well, we have it, but we don't do much.
You don't do much with it. All right. Well, 2020, about a week ago, did a truly fascinating segment. Maybe you heard me talking about it on the program. Damnedest thing. They followed a 57-year-old woman who received both a heart and lung transplant from a teenage boy. When she woke up from the operation, she had the immediate cravings, I mean immediate cravings, of a teenage boy. And if that's not enough for you, Terence, she, of course, had no idea who the donor was, but she had a dream in one of the successive nights in which she dreamt the name of the donor. All of this was chronicled on 2020. Now, again, it goes to the question of the nature of the soul, but, I mean, these are physical body parts. And the obvious implication here is that some essence of that boy was transferred to this woman. And it is not the only case of this. It has been noted again and again in transplant cases. What does that suggest?
Well, you know, we have memories, and we've never located, though we believe they are in the brain. We've never proven or demonstrated that. My friend Rupert Sheldrake, the British physicist, he believes everything has a kind of memory, objects, organs, ideologies, and that these things surround objects like auras and follow them through time, that
Correct.
you can't move a heart or an organ from one body to another without some of the, dare we say it, karma associated with it coming with it. I don't see how it could be any other way.
Sure, we dare say that. No problem. And I think it's fascinating. So it, again, is really evidence of, I don't know if I dare use the word soul, because I'm not sure that is the soul, but it certainly is some sort of transference that is occurring that indicates that maybe our soul or our being is in no central location, but rather a total part of it, yes?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
All right. I would like to begin taking some calls here and let them ask you some questions. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Terence McKenna in Hawaii.
Yes, Terence, I got so many ideas I wanted to question you about, but I'll try to limit it. As far as souls go, would we agree that the electrochemical energy in the brain has to go somewhere after death?
Yes, this is what we're saying, that in a sense it withdraws into what I call hyperspace. In a way you could say the body is a lower dimensional sectioning of a higher dimensional object, which is the soul-body complex.
Mm-hmm. And on the other point I wanted to touch on, as far as your uniqueness curve, how do you account for the chaos theory that there are random particles in the universe affecting the interaction of particles that they come by? I will agree with you that nature as a large system is circular. It recirculates. I mean, there are cycles, but
I'm not sure that's what the time wave zero theory suggests at all.
No, I think this word you introduced into the question, random, this word is a word out of probability theory and statistics. I mean, there may be random processes in the universe, but so far the only ones we've ever found were inside random number generators produced by mathematicians. In other words, it's a nice, simple supposition to suppose there are processes that can be described as random, but the more we look at nature, the more we find order. Chaos theory is misunderstood by a lot of people as using the old notion of chaos as disorder. But what chaos for modern mathematicians is almost a super kind of order, a super fecund medium out of which perturbations to higher states of order can spontaneously emerge. This is what Ilya Prigozhin and Ralph Abraham and all these people are talking about.
I want to ask you something, Terence. I interviewed a scientist who now has a private company called Pear Inc. He produces, you may know about this, he produces a computer program in which you are able, which is a gigantic random number generator designed to run on a good, fast computer. And it enables you to pull down two pictures. For example, one of random absolute noise on the left, and the other of, it wouldn't matter, the scene of a mountain or any other physical photograph that you might want to bring down. It gives you many choices. You put them side by side, Terence, and then the process of randomness will begin in the computer, and your job is to sit in front of the computer and to cause the random noise, well, you can do it either way, cause the random noise to disappear, bringing the picture into perfect clarity, resolution, or you can work on it the other way and try to cause the picture to be completely consumed by the random noise. And the suggestion is, and there is a rating given at each sitting, the suggestion, and apparently the proof is, that you, with your mind, are able to affect a rapidly generating random number a sequence generator, whatever. And by God, you can sit there and do it.
Yes, there's a site on the web called the Retro Psychokinesis site where they claim you not only can move these random number generators around, but you can move them around in the past. In other words,
wait, in the past?
Yes. In other words, they invite you to, numbers are being flashed on the screen, they invite you to concentrate on the numbers being odd or even. And then they demonstrate that to a small percentage, people can actually push this in the direction they want it to go.
So what does that suggest? It is really the same thing I described to you, just a different method. Same thing, though.
Well, but then there's another wrinkle. They tell the people they're generating the numbers in real time, but they've actually made a tape 3 weeks before and put it in a vault, and the people are still able to push it the way they want. In other words, in some sense, they accomplished what they set out to do before they set out to accomplish it.
Oh, my.
So, yes, there's lots of this stuff being statistically studied, and it's very amenable to being demonstrated on the web. And what it really brings, yes, still less.
But that is a form of time travel to the past.
I think what we're going to discover is that how you move around in time is not determined by the laws of physics, but determined by cultural programming. And that this is what's going to tear open shamanism and yoga and some of these other things. We are far more imprisoned by cultural convention than we are by physical law.
All right, Terence. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Where are you, please?
Good morning, Mr. Bell. This is Robert in the San Joaquin Valley in California.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. I have two questions. But, Mr. Bell, I'd like to say first, I heard earlier on the news that scientists have discovered a substance in cats' brains that enable them to, when they take cat naps, if you recall, when they wake up, it's instantaneous and they're very alert. They said that this will lead within the next 2 to 3 years a sleeping pill for humans without side effects, where when they wake up, they will wake up instantly and alert.
And we shall call it the catnap pill. Fascinating.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Terence, sir.
Sure.
Fascinating, sir. I'm really enjoying listening to you. I have two quick questions. The first one, for most of my life, I heard people say that everyone has dreams. I never recalled a dream, and about 8 years ago there was a scientific report that stated that there is approximately 5% of the population of people that do not have dreams. When I go to sleep, it's like a rock. And I wanted to mention that, and then I'll give you my second question. I'll listen to you.
The little slice of death.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Terence?
The last question, Mr. Bell had a guest, Ed Daines, remote viewer.
Oh, yes.
He mentioned in his remote viewing, he could not see beyond 2000, was it 12, Mr. Bell?
Yep.
Now, and Christians refer to the rapture. I'm just wondering what your take would be on all of this.
All right. Very good. Both good questions. Let's tackle the easiest one first, dreams. I'm not aware of a study that suggests that 5% of the population doesn't dream. Most of the people I've talked to suggest that everybody dreams. Maybe 5% don't remember them. And we were talking about dreams earlier with respect to DMT. So could there be people, in your opinion, Terence, who do not dream at all, therefore have no DMT spikes at all?
Well, it's interesting. I would have thought, as you suggested, that everybody dreams, but some people don't remember it. But it is true that I would guess 1 in 20 people don't respond to DMT. This is very puzzling. They simply do not respond to it. And, of course, this has never been studied because it's an underground drug. But there may well be, it may be that dreaming is something recently arriving in human evolution and not something we can just take for granted.
So then, are we to presume that those who do not dream have not sufficiently evolved?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I'd just
Too
say,
cruel, huh?
you know, everybody has different genetic strengths and differences. Maybe they've got a hell of a backswing. I don't know.
Or, to be fair, perhaps we could suggest they are the ones who have evolved past the need for it. I want to be kind to them, Terence.
There you go.
All right, hold on, Terence. Rest, and when we come back, we'll tackle the second part of the question, which involves remote viewing and the realm in which that occurs. Fascinating stuff. Terence McKenna, right back. This is CB's
on the Labor Day edition of the best of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. From May of 1997, it's Art and his guest, the late Terence McKenna. Art Bell will be back live on the air tomorrow night, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And now, enjoy this encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Once again, here I am. Good morning. Terence McKenna is my guest, and oh, what a wide variety of reactions indeed we're receiving. To some, Terence is a heretic. He's dabbling in the black arts, witchcraft, magic, perhaps even the Antichrist. To others, this kind of reaction, Art, I'm a computer artist programmer. Consider myself a very intelligent person. I've been listening with absolute fascination. I think that your guest is right on the mark. It explains everything very succinctly. It's brilliant, period. That's Dave in Milwaukee. And we'll get back to Terence in a moment. Okay, back to Terence McKenna on the big island of Hawaii. Terence, remote viewing, I'm certain you know what that is.
Sure.
Sure, good, okay. What realm are remote viewers operating in your view? Is it the same realm that one might achieve through various methods, including the chemical method you referred to?
Well, I'm sure you've heard about Bell's non-locality theorem and the rise of the idea of non-local information in quantum physics. I think what we're going to have to face is the idea that through the imagination, all information throughout space and time is somehow accessible. The body tends to localize consciousness because consciousness associated with the body has developed to protect the body, basically as a threat detection device. But the imagination, which we tend to think of as something we make up or we create, I think is actually something we're embedded in. And if you can filter out the noise sufficiently, something like viewing at a distance, remote viewing, these things are a commonplace in these shamanic and psychedelic societies.
But even aside from those, in the discipline, now when I say remote viewing, I refer to the discipline that the armed services came up with to spy. Naturally, of course, you know, the armed services are going to use it for a military purpose, and it was to spy. Now, in that process, there are very specific protocols that endeavor to erase the imagination, ensuring the purity of the information received.
Well, this is the projective imagination of the individual meeting the incoming signal of the great beyond, the great whatever it is. And yes, I think a talented remote viewer is someone almost empty of projection so that they can actually feel or intuit the incoming signal. I imagine it's a very delicate thing, but I also imagine with the proper kind of feedback to tell you when you're doing well, it's probably something that could be coaxed out of most people. As I said in the last hour, we're more imprisoned by what we think of as culture than by the laws of physics.
All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Terence McKenna in Hawaii. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm Richard, and I'm in St. Peters, Missouri.
All right.
Mr. McKenna has been giving me some insight. I have been working with a system of divination called geomancy, and it consists of the generation of figures consisting of points. I use dice to generate the figures. Once the figures are generated, then a reading, in other words, a combination of figures, gives insight into future events. It would seem as though I've been working on this for 3 years, and I've gotten it down to the point where I've got a card reading system that is basically self-programmable, which to me is fascinating because my clients have in some way focused on the dice to create the pattern, and in so creating the pattern, I get insight into when things are going to occur and what things will happen to them, and it's on the money. Yeah, I'd love to say it's 100%, but it would suggest to me, other than synchronicity, that consciousness with a simple focus, dice, can travel through time, which I believe is what Mr. McKenna
is talking about. Well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. It's the same idea, or it sounds like the same idea, but perhaps without the same documentation and a flawless performance. Terence?
Well, you know, all over the world there are these divinatory systems. Chinese geomancy, tarot cards, the Maya have a system of throwing crystals and small rocks. And skeptics who deal with these things, who are usually anti the paranormal, always come back and say, well, you know, it was uncanny. It seemed to work. And I think the worldwide presence of these divining systems which seem to work, but which we won't admit work because we can't imagine a scientific principle that would allow them to work,
yes,
they're really signaling to us that the universe is more complicated than our scientific principles are able to make room for.
So he's on the right track.
He's on the right track. It's always about a set of defined elements, whether they're hexagrams, cards, stones, crystals, and then a randomizing of them, either a shaking and a tossing or a choosing or something like that. And then out of the human imagination come associative projections, which are always strangely right on the money. And this indicates to me there's a resonance between the human psyche and the world that is invisible to the ego and that can only be coaxed into an observational space by tricking the ego through a kind of random process like throwing cards or dice.
Sounds to me like you simply have a far more refined process, but I've heard the similarities. All right, here's one for you. Back to time travel. Just a thought to ponder regarding time travel. You're going to have to listen carefully.
Okay.
Terence made a statement with regard to the possibility of eliminating your own existence by killing your own grandfather, as an example. If time travel was possible, it would be impossible to eliminate yourself by killing your own grandfather. The reason for this being that if time travel is possible, then time would be kind of like a loop tape which is constantly replaying itself. By killing your own grandfather, you would cease to exist. Therefore, as the loop replays itself, you would not exist to be able to kill your own grandfather. Consider it. You travel back in time, point a gun at and shoot your grandfather to death prior to his ever having children. You instantly cease to exist, but if you cease to exist, who would pull the trigger on the gun as the time loop replays itself? Confusing, but interesting and worth pondering.
Well, that is the grandfather paradox. They perfectly stated it. I don't exactly hear it as an objection to what I said. That is a perfect stating of why many people have thought time travel was impossible, or that you could only travel forward into the future.
All right, east of the Rockies, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Yes, hi. Terence, from what I've heard, you are obviously a disciple of Satan. And I have to say that I want to know why no scientist has ever disproven the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
All right, Terence, disciple of Satan.
Yes, he is a disciple of the devil.
Okay, well, let's get his reaction to that. We're talking of these matters, so it is worth some consideration, Terence. How do you respond?
Well, if I am a disciple of Satan, it's an unknowing disciple.
Okay.
I am, at your break, someone said I was a heretic. I certainly am a heretic.
You're not a heretic, you're just deceived.
Pardon me?
You're deceived. You're not a heretic. You're deceived by Satan. When you die, you will know that Jesus Christ is God.
Well, perhaps.
And he did come
my
back from the dead.
position on all of this is...
Sir, pause and let him answer, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, my position in this is that we're not in this world to choose between good ideologies and bad ideologies. I think that's sort of, I don't know, maybe this is middle age setting in on me, but I've sort of come to the conclusion that all ideologies are the enemies of human freedom, and that we're not, you haven't made progress when you choose existentialism over Christianity or anything over anything. Real maturity begins when you notice that these ideologies are cultural furniture.
So Jesus Christ was a liar.
No, he...
no.
No,
he was God. He says
he was a piece of cultural furniture inside Western civilization. But let me turn to this question of the resurrection for a moment, which I find a little more interesting.
All right.
I can't remember in which gospel it is. The caller probably can tell us. But when the Marys go to the tomb the morning after the resurrection and Christ is there, he says to them as they approach, he says, "Women, touch me not, for I am not yet fully of the nature of the Father."
Mm-hmm.
And I have never heard any Christian enthusiast discuss exactly what this means. It's a fascinating statement. Here is Christ, resurrected, having overcome death, standing alive at the side of the tomb, but saying, "I am not yet completely of the nature of the Father." And what this suggests to me is some kind of crypto-biological process that we're dealing with here. I don't think science can prove or disprove the resurrection, because science never deals with unique events. If we had 1,000 resurrections, I suppose they could statistically examine it and make a judgment. But these unique historical events are more properly the study of historians, not science.
Let me ask you, in your own little way, as a historian, as you have looked back to develop your model, when you get to the time of Christ, what do you see? What kind of peak do you see? It's a very good
question.
Yes.
Fascinating question. At that point in the wave, there is a unique signature that doesn't occur at anywhere else in the wave. So, in a sense, it does indicate the life of Christ as being incredibly unique. But recall I said it never says what will happen, it just says where to look. And what makes the call on Christ a little difficult, what makes it a little difficult is that Christ shared the earth with Augustus Caesar. In fact, the story of Christ's birth mentions that Joseph and Mary were going because of a census of the world that Caesar had called. Well, Caesar Augustus was one of the greatest military and political geniuses of all time. So he's in the same part of the wave as Christ. I don't know how to tease them apart, but I can certainly tell you that the time wave tells us that the period from 15 BC to 40 AD was extremely novel.
I have spoken with a number of, referring to the remote viewers, and they have made a unique statement, many of them, that at 2012, or at approximately 2012, they can look no further. And they run into a sort of a brick wall, if you will, and it is as though there is nothing beyond. But what they do see and describe is a gigantic spiritual event of some magnitude which they're unable to discern the precise nature of.
I could climb aboard all of this. I think we're headed for everything we can imagine. In other words, the resurrection and the life, the overcoming of three-dimensional space and time travel, star flight, immortality, planetary telepathy, consciousness out of the body. It will be delivered by human hands, out of the human imagination, under the prompting of the gods and the entities and the forces in the human unconscious.
It is fortuitous, Terence, that we are doing this program and recording all of this for history, for the time after they toss you into the volcano. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Terence.
Hello? Yes, where are you, sir?
I'm in Prince George, B.C.
British Columbia.
Way up here in Canada.
Okay.
Friendly neighbor to the north.
Yes, sir.
I'm just getting a little disheartened by some of these weird Christians, but that's beside the point. I wanted to ask Terence if he'd ever read any Castaneda.
Oh, yeah. I read a lot of the early stuff.
A lot of the early stuff. There's a later one called The Fire from Within. And for any of the viewers out there who are digging this, which I am, I'm only 21, but I've been waiting 1,000 years to hear this program. But
look, I mostly have listeners. Now, I'm not saying some are not viewing, but mostly listeners.
Oh, viewers, listeners.
The ones who are of my persuasion
might be viewing.
Well, you got to use the real eyes. But anyways, The Fire from Within, it's basically, I just wanted to state that it covers exactly what's been discussed here tonight. And for any of the listeners out there, I'd just like to say that if they're into it, and maybe Art yourself, if you dig that, if you're digging what Terence is saying tonight, that maybe you should read that book. Maybe I should read that book? Yeah.
So, Terence, you've not read the book?
Not that particular one. I read the early Castaneda things.
What do you think about it?
Well, I think that he, in the earlier ones, he was truer in his description of the methods. In other words, I think that any claim to be able to penetrate these places regularly and effectively that isn't psychedelically based, in other words, that doesn't involve alteration of consciousness, has to be looked at very carefully. And what goes on in those Castaneda books is he starts out talking about datura and peyote and this and that, but then in the later books it becomes more about these techniques and quasi-yogic stuff.
But why is it... but wait a minute. I have a question. Why is it not possible, Terence, that once one is introduced through the chemical method to these alternative realities, that one eventually may not discern a path without their use?
Well, in principle, it's possible. It's just simply in a lifetime of looking into this, I've never seen it in a convincing form. And a point that needs to be made here is a psychedelic experience is not like meditation. It's not like anything else. Meditation is pretty, nobody goes to the ashram in the morning with their knees beating together in terror over what's about to overcome them. On the other hand, DMT test pilots are dry-mouthed and white-knuckled. This is the real thing, folks.
He says it becomes a matter of saving and rechanneling energy.
Well, if you can do it without the plant ally, I take my hat off to you. If I found it happening to me, not in the presence of the ally, I would be extremely agitated and upset. I don't want to be able to achieve these states on the natch. They're too titanically alien and strange.
That's interesting. That's interesting. In other words, you are suggesting that that you are very, very comfortable with the chemical avenue, because to have it otherwise would be so disconcerting as to possibly. I'm not sure, Terence, but it may bother me that I understand you so well.
I thought it might. I thought you and I were kindred souls when I looked at your book about the quickening. Art, I think anybody who is stretching into this stuff comes to the same conclusion, that things are moving faster and faster in a very bizarre direction.
I agree. Terence, can you stick around for one more?
Yeah, one more.
Good. One more it is then. Terence McKenna's here. It's a rare opportunity for you, truly a rare opportunity. So I would suggest that you go to your telephone and join us if you are able. If not, and you would like to get a copy of this program, you can do so beginning now. It'll be a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4-hour program by calling 1-800-917-4278. It'll take some re-listening. That's 1-800-917-4278. From the high desert, this is CBC.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I want to ask you a couple questions. Do you think the reason why people generally, like remote viewers, for instance, lose credibility is because, like psychics, they have a distasteful track record and don't predict stuff like the Oklahoma bombing or a bank robbery before it happens? And do you think that time machines can be, the possibility of the future of time machines might have something to do with something that's very normal in nature, such as extreme shockwave technology and just normal physical things that happen generally and the mainstream physics that will create synthetic time travel reality?
Well, I don't know from what direction time travel is going to come. It used to be completely unrespectable to discuss it in the scientific literature, and if you run literature searches now, you'll see over the past 10 years this has gone from unmentionable to quite respectable.
Right.
There's a book called Time Travel in Physics and Science Fiction by Nabum that will definitely bring you up to speed on the many, many approaches to time travel. It's been known since 1948. There was a paper by Kurt Gödel with a scheme for time travel that would work. It simply requires that you spin a cylinder half the size of the solar system at the speed of light.
Yes.
But everybody agrees if you could do that and then travel along its transverse axis, you would be moved backward into time. So in the way we started out with vacuum tubes and now go to the Pentium, we have now very rude Goldberg approaches to time travel, but I'm sure by 2012 we will have brought this to a kind of perfection.
And do you suspect, Terence, that time travel will manifest itself from the physical, from physics, or that time travel will be manifested from within?
I think we're going to find a way basically to obliterate the difference. It's only been 500 years since some Europeans sailed over the horizon and found the lost half of this planet.
That's right.
And I think the human imagination is as solid as the real estate you're standing on, Art, and that when this is understood, there will be a kind of migration into the human imagination, and that this is, time travel, space flight, immortality. We have these terms for these things, but what is really coming is going to be all this and more. Our way of talking about it is inevitably incredibly quaint because we talk about it inside the very culture it's going to make obsolete.
It sure would do that. Terence, a lighter question. This comes from my wife at the beginning of the program. She knew that you were the one to follow on in Timothy Leary's footsteps, and so she thought she would ask you. It is rumored, or it is perhaps a legend, that Timothy had squirreled away like a treasure trove at some secret location 25,000 hits of Blue Sandos Where is it? Do you know where it is?
My goodness, Art, your wife follows these things very closely. Where is the blue sando?
Yeah, that's right. Where's the X mark on the map? Have you got the map?
Well, my lips are sealed. When they open the tombs on Cydonia, I'll issue a press statement.
All right, we'll leave it right there. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Where are you, sir?
I am in San Francisco. My name is Ryan.
All right, Ryan.
It is great to talk to both of you. I am of the belief that there are two types of people in the world, basically, like people who have had psychedelic experiences, people who haven't, and the vast difference in their ways of thinking once they have had a psychedelic experience.
That's why it's illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the direction, I wanted to ask Terence, that he sees this state now where it is illegal and why it is keeping, I think, our civilization down to its dreadful state. I think that, if it could be, like through mass awareness somehow, I just wish it could be legal so people, I think, could go to the next level that we are, coming to so fast with things speeding up. I mean, everybody feels it, I believe, everybody that I know.
Did you say next level?
Yes.
You're calling from San Francisco, not Rancho Santa Fe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Let me say this. I mean, I'm a bit of a pessimist on this subject because I take psychedelics so seriously. I can't imagine them ever being really legal unless there's a total social transformation, because my analysis of it is the reason everybody from a Marxist state to a Christian oligarchy to a high-tech industrial democracy can get together and agree that psychedelics are a terrible, terrible thing is because the social effect of psychedelics being taken by large numbers of people is a kind of deconditioning from the cultural myths. Whatever they are, it's no knock on any given society. It's just that if people start taking psychedelics, they start questioning what they've been told about reality. And culture is in the business of keeping you inside a set of predetermined answers to those questions.
Well, based on that, then, Terence, perhaps legalization day is 2012.
Well, there you go, Art. There's an apocalypse that would shake our world and leave the heavens intact.
The day that drug war ends. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Terence McKenna on the Big Island of Hawaii. Hello.
Hi, Art.
Hi, where are you?
I actually am also from San Francisco.
Okay.
So it seems to be San Francisco night for the last two callers.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Nor am I.
Anyway, I just wanted to tell you up front, I am a professional stand-up comedian, and I guess sort of in the vein of Lenny Bruce, so I do a lot of research, and I've read a lot of your writings, Mr. McKenna, including The Archaic Revival, Invisible Landscape, and also, excuse me, the CD that you did with Space-Time Continuum.
Oh, yeah, the Alien Dream Time.
Yeah, which was very fun. And I'm also familiar with Mr. Sheldrake's writings as well. And I would say to the 25% dissenter faxes that you've been receiving, Art, that they are probably saying that because they're not familiar with a lot of what Mr. McKenna is saying.
And a lot of them never will be. It'll go right past them, and they hear one thing only, and they see devils. And,
right.
That's okay.
Right. Well, actually, in relation to what you're saying there, I would say the gentleman who considered Mr. McKenna to be in league with Satan, that the truth does not have an ideological agenda or anything like that whatsoever. My question to you is, you're familiar with the writings of John Lilly?
Sure.
In my neighborhood, there's actually an isolation tank center, and I regularly go down there with mushrooms, and I'll hop into the tank while I'm doing mushrooms and whatnot. I'm very fascinated by your writings on DMT, and what I'd like to know is how would I be able to locate DMT or the plants that it comes there from?
Now, I don't know that we can tell that on the air.
Well, we can say something. We've already said it's right behind your eyebrows.
Right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is the real practical answer is go to the Internet in terms of if you want to locate plants in your ecosystem.
There you go.
There's vast discussion of this and incredible enthusiastic communities. But as Art says, we've already pushed the envelope. I don't think we can start peddling Schedule 1 substances on the air, nor would we wish to.
Nor would you want me to, sir, because then you might not hear me anymore.
Right.
However, it's on the Internet. Look, it's a lot less dangerous than a lot of the other crap on the Internet, building missiles and bombs and all the rest of that. So...
Can you? Can I ask you this? Can you give
use
me
a search? Use a search engine.
Right.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
That's what they're there for. Wildcard line. You're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Wow, I actually got through.
Yes, sir. It seems that way. Where are you?
I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
All right. Go right ahead.
Another hotbed.
Oh, first of all, Art, I just wanted to say about a year ago I talked to you and you were telling me that I was doing myself a lot of harm by using psychedelics. And I think Terence is just good proof that someone can turn out all right.
No, I didn't tell you that.
Oh.
I didn't tell you were doing yourself a lot of harm.
I thought you did.
Nope.
No?
I wouldn't make that judgment. That's something that only you can conclude.
I see. But also, I want to make a suggestion for a guest. I think Terence might be familiar with him, but have you ever heard of Douglas Rushkoff?
Oh, yeah, I know Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've read many of his books, and
just what he needs, more publicity.
I think he's just a great guy. And
all right. Anything else?
Yes. Terence, I have a video called Alien Dreamtime.
Yeah.
I just want to say I really like it.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a thing I did a few years ago with a band called Space-Time Continuum, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the essence of it, Terence?
Well, it was a rave in San Francisco, and I talked about, if you can imagine this, I talked about the impact of psilocybin on human evolution to a backbeat. This is something we haven't gotten into here, Art, but I have a whole other rap on how mushrooms actually impacted and caused the breakthrough to self-reflecting human consciousness. We'll have to save that one for another time.
I guess so. Interesting. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Larry in Peoria, Illinois.
Hi, Larry.
This is really very interesting because I just recently read some of the excerpts from the Psychedelic Experience by Timothy Leary, which is his take on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I missed the first part of the show, so I'm sorry if this has already been talked about, but I was wondering what is basically the difference between DMT and LSD.
Good question.
Well, LSD lasts hours and hours and tends to be, I think my own phrase is abrasively psychoanalytic. Essentially, I think LSD does what most people think psychedelic drugs do. They cause you to review past memories. They cause you to see your life in a different light, so forth and so on. DMT is not like that. It seems to go beyond the personal dimension. It doesn't matter, I think, who you are or where you started from. It carries you into its own world, a world that is alien on its own terms and doesn't have a lot of information in it about your psychology or your dilemmas. So it's less useful for psychoanalysis and more useful for exploring what I consider to be pretty dramatic paranormal dimensions, considering they're so easily accessed.
You're speaking about, it's interesting, all this talk about dimensions and going to the next level. I just had a psychedelic experience recently when I had a meditation on the nature of the universe as being like a geometric structure that's so immensely more vast and diverse than you can really explain.
Well, I think, there's the vastness of space and time that we know about, but then as we look into the micro dimension and we see how much there is in the atomic and subatomic world, I mean, the world is an amazing and dynamic place, and this is why I'm so down on ideologies, because I think they're dusty mirrors to hold up to the splendor of the felt presence of the living universe.
Here's I believe, McKenna quote. Quote, Western civilization is a loaded gun pointed at the head of this planet. Unquote.
Yep.
Yep. Western civilization is a loaded gun pointed at the head of this planet.
And what I think I was referring to there was resource extraction, propaganda, pollution of the atmosphere, and this sort of thing. If we continue to practice our cultural values as we have practiced them over the next 1,000 years, we're going to make the earth unfit for our children, which is a sin and a tragedy of such magnitude we don't even have a name for it.
Boy, I sure agree with that. And then this, quote, LSD is a drug that occasionally causes psychotic behavior in persons that have not taken it. Terence McKenna, quoting Tim Leary in Los Angeles in 1991. Accurate?
Yeah. Well, I tried to give that quote to Tim, and he swore to me he'd never said that. So it's sort of hanging out there in the air. But it's a very funny quote, because I think it makes clear to people how agitated you can become by drugs you haven't taken, and how often the people who have the most negative drug reactions are the people who didn't take the drug.
You are a heretic. And just one last, as we head toward the bottom of the hour, the mind rests on a foundation of chemical machinery.
Yes, it rests on a foundation of chemical machinery. It is not simply the product of chemical machinery any more than I am an automobile when I drive it.
All right, well, rest your chemical machine for a moment, and we'll come right back. Terence McKenna from the Big Island of Hawaii is my guest. We've got 30 more. If you've got a question, we've got phone lines. I'm Art Bell, and this is CBC. My guest is Terence McKenna. Terence, again, with respect to Timothy, he, of course, as you well know, has been launched into orbit,
right,
with a number of other notables. And I was just wondering, again, referencing that 25,000 hits of Blue Santos, do you suppose it's possible that Timothy had them launched with himself, and that orbital decay will provide one great last acid rain at about 2012?
Well, he did want to prove that you can take it with you.
All right. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Where are you?
I'm in Nanaimo, BC.
British Columbia. All right.
Yeah. I first discovered you, Art, about 3 years ago, and I was getting you very faintly at night from KEX in Oregon.
Yes.
Now we've got you on CFUN in Vancouver, and we're all real happy about it.
Thank you.
You keep us up all night. So, Terence,
sure.
I've read, I think, all of your books, if not most of them, and in True Hallucinations, there's a part where you have a mushroom in the hut with you and your brother, and he makes a sound,
right,
that you describe, but I think nobody else that, unless we were there, we wouldn't understand the sound, makes the mushroom glow, or appear to. And you were speaking before about human consciousness interacting through resonance with the universe around us. And I wonder if you could sort of explain how those two things tie in, and in doing so, I'd like to ask you if you've read The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot.
I have read The Holographic Universe. He was a friend of mine. He unfortunately died a few years ago.
Oh.
Resonance is the principle, almost magical, of action at a distance. You can play a certain open note on the cello, and the piano 50 feet across the room will sound in the same octave. So resonance, we know, exists. It's a musical phenomenon, but what we need to realize, I think, is that resonance is built into time. Time, in a sense, you could say a given moment in time is a kind of hologrammatic interference pattern of past times, and I consider those past times to be in resonance. So one of the things Art and I haven't discussed tonight about my time wave is that it does allow you to look at a certain period of time and decide what it was in resonance with in the past, and those past epochs that are influencing it, then their influence can be seen in popular fads, furniture styles, what movies are up, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the DMT, you say it's produced in our bodies.
It is.
And can the DMT molecule in the brain change our electron spin resonance in the molecules in our brain? And can that possibly make our brain act as an antenna that allows us to see all those other things that you're talking about?
Well, these are the kinds of ideas that my brother and I were playing with clear back in the early 70s, and the tragedy, one of the tragedies of the repression of psychedelics is not that they were taken out of the hands of the curious public, but that they were made off limits to scientific research. Not that anybody put up a sign, but it was very clearly understood that pharmacologists who specialized in psychedelics could expect to be passed over, not promoted, not given the plum jobs. I could spiel off a dozen questions, very interesting central questions about the mechanism of psychedelics that we could answer with ordinary clinical studies. It's simply that how do you do ordinary clinical studies on substances that the government has made illegal? It's impossible.
Of course you don't. Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hi.
Wow, this is a very serendipitous meeting. Thank you. I play around with a lot of EEG for the last few years, and I find that I do serendipitous things, but unplanned. Hey, thanks, Art.
Sure.
What do you think? Well, there was one physicist, I can't think of his name. He describes time as nature's way of keeping things from happening all at once.
That's exactly what Terence just said we're going to come to at the 0 point 2012.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to get back into a little bit of physics, but almost cosmic physics, having to do with black holes.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you how you felt about the black hole being nature's way of the ultimate recycling device in the universe.
Well, it certainly is this. Anything which falls into a black hole is deconstructed down to spin and angular momentum, and I think all other information is stripped out of it. I think, if there can be gravitational wells like that, then there can also be the kind of novelty wells that I'm suggesting. In other words...
Novelty wells?
Well, if statistical probability is not a very clear way of looking at the universe, if in fact probabilities vary through space and time of any given event, then there will be areas of extremely high improbability and conversely probability. So I think we've got to get past this idea of time as a smooth surface and begin to think of it as a kind of landscape, an area, a place where some things are more probable in some places and some things more probable in others. You look for water in the bottom of the valley, you look for glaciers up on the slopes. I think time has a topography. It is a topological surface of some sort, and science in the West has just completely sailed past all this.
Well, how is it described? Well, I don't want to make it a long thing out of this, but...
Well, in Newton, it's described as pure duration, in other words, perfect flatness. Then Einstein comes along and he says, well, no, in the presence of massive gravitational objects, space-time has a very smooth and slight curvature. What I'm saying is that even at local scales, time is variable, and that when we explode time at any scale, we discover the same fractal patterns as we're seeing on scales far above and far below it. So really, the
or
time,
far in and far out of it, too.
Far in it and far out of it. So really what it is it's like a Fourier transform or something like that. It's a holographic matrix that is self-similar on many scales. The organization of a galaxy, the organization of an atom, these things in my theory are morphologically linked. They look that way because they are linked across scale and across space and time by an underlying architecture of the universe. You know, there's a big mystery now in cosmology, the dark matter mystery. Where is 90% of the matter? For the galaxies to be hanging together under the laws of gravity, 90% of them must be missing. Well, I say there's no missing matter. What's missing here are some laws, and the laws that's missing...
Could it be consciousness itself?
Well, it's this appetite for complexity that every particle in the universe participates in this. The galaxies hang together as spirals because it's the more novel thing to do, not because they are under the strict control of gravity, but because there is a cosmic law of aggregation toward novelty that we've missed.
Would the Fourier be a way of measuring that, say with Fourier measurement of the brain itself or EEG?
Well, you could measure it. You could measure it in a Fourier matrix. You could measure it in many different kinds of matrices. The point is to demonstrate it to somebody outside the system who's looking at it. I think the great breakthrough in mathematical modeling of nature in the last 20 years has been the discovery of fractals and self-similarity on many scales. And this is part of that. What I'm saying really is that time is a fractal structure. It can be defined by a limited set of variables and then iterated on the micro scale, the macro scale, the human scale. They're all operating under the same architectural constraints, but at different scales.
You know, when I talk to my friends in the EEG world, I do a lot of EEG spectral analysis and stuff. They think I'm nuts.
Well,
I say, well, if you want to buy my machine and operate, this is how the universe is. And when I speak in these terms, it's like it's in a big hall, you know, empty room.
There's a lot of confusion in the sciences right now. The complexity people are not talking to the dynamics people. The poor materialists have all been crowded into biology. Meanwhile, over in quantum physics, they're talking like occultists. And none of the news has reached psychology and sociology yet. The house of science is in incredible disarray, and it's because sciences wish to describe nature. They've now dispensed with all the easy stuff. Now we're asking questions like, what is language? What is mind? What is process? These are very deep and difficult questions, and I think they're going to cause a revolution in the science and a reformation of its methods, or science is not going to be adequate to the game.
Well, perhaps after some period of anarchy.
Yes, well, that's what we're going through.
East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello. Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I just want to start by saying thanks. And I wanted to say it's an honor to speak to Terence. I'm a big admirer.
Where are you, sir?
I'm in St. Louis. My name is Alex. I'm 21 in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right.
Okay, and I wanted to start by actually commenting on a couple of things that have been said earlier this evening. One, I'm looking really forward to 2012, and I'm looking really forward to being part of human evolution and being in control of that, really. And I wanted to say about the throwing out of the rock that, you know, it seems kind of like that God has already thrown out the rocks on this planet, you know, and that is plenty as is. You know, that is the way things are. And that's the planet as we have it, and that should be plenty of knowledge as is, you know, for us to understand everything. And I've had some experience with psychedelics, and I'm not finished yet, far from actually. And but the truth to it is that my own personal belief is that you achieve true enlightenment after being sober and meditating in sobriety and getting inside yourself. The truth is not outside; it's inside.
That's a very interesting point, Terence. Let me ask you a question. Do you contemplate the possibility that your trip will be complete before 2012? In other words, your personal trip, that you will conclude at some point that you've done as much as you need to do and know what you need to know and don't need to do it anymore?
I can imagine that. What I would like to do is take my ideas and turn them over to a general community of interested people and let the chips fall where they may. You know, science is the only human endeavor where you actually get points for proving you're wrong. And I love that approach. I'm not interested in pontificating or building dogma or founding a cult. I'm interested in the ongoing adventure, which is a collective adventure, of generating ideas, testing them against reality and the evidence, discussing them with other people, and then going on to build better ideas. And I cannot believe that Time Wave Zero is finished or complete because I have finished with it. I'm hoping that, like work done by greats in the past, this thing can actually be validated as a real insight into how nature works.
Right. Well, that would have been an arrogant attitude, and I'm glad to see you not displaying it.
Yes, I would like to see this thing broken on the wheel of rational discourse or progressively advanced to new levels.
All right. West of the Rockies, without a lot of time left, you're on the air with Terence McKenna. Hello.
Hi, this is Dan from Northern California.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, quick question, Terence.
Yeah.
On your book, Food of the Gods, you talked about early proto-hominids encountering, psychotropic plants, I guess psilocybin,
right,
and that, being sort of the catalyst for this, incredible leap of human consciousness. What about the next step in our evolution? Do you see it coming through some sort of psychoactive substance that we've either have yet to develop or encounter?
Well, I think that we have encountered these things. I think the enormous creativity of the last half of the 20th century is a direct consequence of the rise of psychedelic chemistry and the breakdown of barriers between cultures. In other words, most of the people designing and building the Internet have psychedelics in their path. Most of the people in the music business, in fashion, in media, in scientific research, medical research, architecture, the dirty little secret about the creativity of 20th century civilization, at least in the last half of the 20th century, is that it rests so firmly on a psychedelic base, and yet we deny that.
I've got one final question I've got to pose to you with regard to our discussion on the Internet. I interviewed Charles Osman, an expert in nanotechnology. He predicts that within the next few years, or even less, we will begin to encounter sentient entities within the Internet.
Artificial intelligences. I believe that will happen. Hans Moravec has written a lot about this. He would be a guy for your show, Art. And he's talked about how these AIs, these artificial intelligences, they learn 50,000 times faster than a human being. Well, you turn one loose on the Internet where it can talk to all these computers, it can make 50,000 years of progress in 1 year. Moravec thinks we're not even going to know what hit us when these things come into being.
Listen, time as we must measure it is coming to a close. How many books have you written?
5 or 6. Invisible Landscape, Food of the Gods, Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide, True Hallucinations, Archaic Revival, on and on.
Where do people get these? Regular bookstores?
Oh, yeah. They're Bantam and HarperCollins, so any decent bookstore has them or can order them.
All right. Suppose somebody would like to send you email on the Internet. Now, be careful here.
Okay, here it comes. HCE@well.com. That's HCE, think Here Comes Everybody, at well.com.
HCE@well.com.
Right.
That's so appropriate. Here comes everybody, indeed. Do you are you able to answer the majority of the communications?
I try. It may be short. I'm getting about 70 email messages a day. What you're going to do to me, Art, I can't even imagine. But I will make a valiant try. Conciseness counts.
All right, it does indeed, and people should understand that with the volume you're about to get, it may be brief. Terence, what a pleasure it has been. Again, we will do it someday. If they don't toss you into the volcano first, we'll do another interview one day. How about it?
Well, I'm worried they may toss you after this one, but if you're there, I'll be here.
All right, Terence, done.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Take care. From the big island of Hawaii, he's headed back up to his mountain. And me, I may be headed for the volcano. Who knows? That's HCE@well.com.
All right.